Of note, this is S.K. Williams, and what you are about to watch was recorded in 2018. It is not the level of audio commentary I am capable of producing now, but it is back when I wasn't as comfortable talking into a microphone, so I hope you can at least get something out of it. It was again recorded before I had certain issues resolved. At any rate, please enjoy the presentation. Hello, this is S.K. Williams, and today I would like to talk about the mythologies that militant atheists often give about religion, and the history of religion, especially the Christian religion, and how they don't quite accord with real history. This is an especially interesting topic since quite frequently when talking online, I will be talking to someone that isn't necessarily a militant atheist. I don't know if they're atheists or not. Not all atheists are militant, of course. Not all of them are belligerent. Not all of them are hostile. And you'll be talking about a historical topic, and because of the profound influence Christianity has had on history, that will be brought up either by oneself or by the party one is speaking to. But because the internet is a public forum, you will also very often find a militant atheist pop up and be critical of what you just said, countering it with the real story of history, which is the entire opposite of what you said. Or at the very least, they like to say it's the opposite. Because one of the other things you'll notice when dealing with militant atheists is the vagary to which they constantly speak about history or subjects of philosophy. Granted, speaking in vagaries is sometimes a necessary way to talk about topics, because a topic is so broad and you're trying to make a point about a specific point and you can't bring to bear details, or else the point that you wish to make will be drowned in those details, it will be lost. And at other times, even when detailed information would be beneficial, it is sometimes simply convenient to leave it out. Everyone speaks in generalities and vagaries from time to time, but when it comes to the militant atheist, it's always without fail. And it's without fail even though they require detail. A good example of that would be the rather common claim that the Abrahamic faiths, or monotheism in general, has been the greatest blight to human history. To prove this, they will recite the fact that monotheistic religions and the Abrahamic faiths have been the #1 cause of wars throughout the world, and this is just a historical fact. If you don't believe me, look it up. But they don't really go into detail about this. If they do, they'll invoke a handful, like the Crusades or 9/11. But these are hardly the majority of wars throughout history, or a particularly good sample to make a case from. Even if you were to accept that these things were caused purely by religion, purely by monotheism, purely by those Abrahamic faiths, and had no other reason than religion, and that religion made them bad, and you accept the fact that these were horrible and unjustified events, that doesn't prove that they are the #1 cause of wars. And you'll frequently hear things that sound kind of like they are specific examples, but when you think about them, they really aren't. For example, I have been told frequently that it was the Christian establishment that was responsible for the mistreatment of Native Americans within American history. Indeed, it was this Christian establishment that was behind the Indian Removal Act and the displacement of natives from their lands. It was purely motivated by religious beliefs, since the Indians, not being Christian, were seen as heathen. And let's not forget that the Christians were also racially motivated, since the Christians were white and the Indians were not. So not only did the Indians not share their religion, which the Christians of course said was the one true faith, which caused them to see all others as evil for holding a different view, but also noted the darker skin, and noted that the evil heathens of dark skin needed to be removed out of white Christian lands. Of course, they invoke this to prove that Christians in general are bad, with the usual lack of nuance of any potential disagreement within Christianity. It is simply the Christian establishment. But you may see that while this may be a valid point, the atheists are still making a valid point too, since the Christians were still the ones responsible for the removal of the Indians. And it doesn't hurt that this is indeed one of the best documented things in history. We have a great deal of evidence to support this fact. Documented evidence, works from Christian leaders denouncing the Indians as heathen infidels, works talking about their dark skin and talking about their alien beliefs, and works of the Christian church telling the government that the Indians must be removed, and having a great deal of social influence. This is, after all, what the atheist case is based on, and atheists, above all things, believe in having proper evidence before they make their beliefs, do they not? So it's obvious that this well-documented, well-established fact actually happened. Except for one minor detail. You see, for all the talk about how well-documented this is, the atheists never produce any of such documentation within the context of these debates. Indeed, if you ask for such documentation, they will tell you to look it up yourself, and say something trite like, "I'm not here to do your homework for you." Of course, if you say you have done your own homework and have failed to unearth such evidence, you will either be an idiot who does not know how to properly research, you will be afraid of the truth and have never even begun research, or you are dishonest, knowing the truth, having seen the evidence, but are simply lying about it because Christians are liars for Jesus. The one thing they will not allow into consideration is the fact that perhaps you are honest and you simply have not found such evidence. But that's sort of the issue. Where is the evidence that the Christian establishment viewed the Indians particularly harshly? What's more, can you grant details? What specific churches were preaching sermons? What specific ministers? Do you have copies of those sermons? And sermons were written down and often distributed in pamphlet form. Do you have the letters that the Christian establishment sent to D.C. to criticize the Indians? Do you have the names of the men who composed the documents or signed them? Do you have the names of the Christians who actively participated in the removal of the Indians? And of course, they don't. And it gets worse when you realize that a lot of the popular imagining of how history went isn't exactly accurate. For instance, we all know that the Native Americans were not Christian. They practiced Native American religion and spirituality, but in reality, by the early 19th century, the majority of Indians had actually already converted to Christianity. Pointing this out will either get a denial, people deny that they are Christian, or you will be told that they were forced to convert. The operational assumption will be that Christianity has nothing in its own right that would be attractive to anyone, and no one would willingly convert to it from a native custom. Rather, if any Indians did convert, it's because the white man came and forced them to convert, whilst committing all sorts of awful atrocities. Of course, they can't show documentation of the white men coming in, committing those atrocities, and forcing the Indians to convert, either. Rather, we must conclude that either the Indians were not Christian, or if they were, they weren't real Christians, they were forced to convert, and didn't like it, simply because it makes Christianity look bad. And you have the same basic thing happening in American history when it comes to slavery. Atheists love the fact that the Bible mentions slavery and has laws about it. They say this proves that it condones slavery, and from there we'll say that the Christian church never had anything wrong with slavery, and thus it was the Christians who supported the slave trade within America. I have heard many atheists claim that it was the atheists, agnostics, and deists who rejected slavery, whilst the Christians supported it, and Christians only swapped sides to abolitionism when they realized they were losing. They knew slavery would be abolished, so they switched sides and took credit for the work of others, pretending to have always been for abolition when in reality they believed their holy book that God was okay with slavery and supported it the whole time, thus denying the true credit to where it belongs. The atheists, agnostics, and deists who, using common human decency and empathy as the basis of their morals and reason, understood that slavery was wrong and who opposed it from the start, had their true credit stolen by those evil, wretched Christian liars who had always supported slavery and kept blacks in chains, but are now claiming to have always opposed slavery. But we know better. Their holy book, the book of Bronze Age myths those delusional fools believe in, condones slavery, and the Christian church supported slavery as well. Or, if they did oppose slavery, it was in spite of their religion, due to that common human empathy, and not because of it. Their religion clearly condones slavery. The book of Jewish fairy tales condones slavery. The Bronze Age myth book that is the Bible condones slavery, and the Christian church always taught slavery was good, so any Christian abolitionists were acting against what their religion taught and not for it, and acting more like those noble and enlightened atheists, agnostics, and deists. And therein lies the rub. They will either deny Christians were abolitionists, or they will deny Christians were the first abolitionists and claim Christians only became abolitionists when they realized they were on the losing side of history, and then the Christians took credit for it. Or else they will claim that Christians were abolitionists, but it was in spite of their religion and not because of it. You can't really have a meaningful discussion of how Christians approached their own beliefs, or how different interpretations of the Bible existed. Rather, you have the atheist way of reading the Bible, which is the correct way of reading the Bible, and since the atheists have the correct way of believing the Bible, it's what Christians actually believed historically, and therefore Christians supported slavery if they believed in the Bible because the atheists said so. And again, you don't need to appeal to actual historical sources or what historical people were really saying about their own beliefs. You simply need to listen to the atheist narrative. In real history, the first ever anti-slave bill introduced in the United States was introduced by the Society of Friends of Jesus, otherwise known as the Quakers. The truth is, many churches opposed slavery, and they did so based upon their religious convictions, not in spite of them. And it doesn't really matter that the atheists say otherwise. This is an easy to determine historical reality, and you can find it in any even basic history course that is taught at high school. Religious conviction actually motivated many to oppose slavery. Now, there were some that, based upon religious belief, also supported slavery, but the truth of the matter is issues are complex. They are not simple, and the atheist wishing to whittle it down does no one any favors, especially since their narrative says that atheists, agnostics, and deists all recognize slavery as wrong and opposed it, when this clearly isn't so, as many notable atheists, such as David Hume, actually supported the slave trade. And unlike them, I can name names. I can name Voltaire. I can name Diderot. The views on slavery were more complicated in the past than they are giving them credit for. And it simply isn't true that if you were an atheist, agnostic, or a deist, that you were an abolitionist, and it certainly isn't true that if you were a Christian, you supported the slave trade, or if you didn't, You acted against your religion. The atheist does not get to define what someone else's religion actually teaches. But this is sort of the issue that I keep running into when it comes to militant atheists. They'll do the same thing with numerous other things, such as how Richard Carrier will claim that America's founding fathers were in no way influenced by Christianity in the formation of America. Carrier, as well as most militant atheists of his ilk, view the American Revolution as an unqualified good. It was a struggle against tyranny that brought about freedom and the best form of government that ever existed in a republic in which we the people rule, when there's the Constitution. But according to Carrier, America's founders were not influenced by Christianity whatsoever. They were influenced by Greek and Roman pagan philosophies, not by Christianity, which had absolutely no impact upon them at all. Of course, Carrier, as well as numerous other militant atheists, also claimed that Adolf Hitler was a devout Christian, and that the Third Reich and the entire events surrounding the Holocaust and Nazi Germany were, in fact, deeply motivated by a strong Christian faith and a Christian cultural background. Thus, Christianity caused the Nazis, but did not cause the American Revolution. That which is good, the American Revolution, which brought about freedom, was not connected to Christianity in any way, and Christianity probably hindered it. Meanwhile, of course, the Nazis were deeply, deeply influenced by Christianity to the point where the Nazi ideology couldn't even exist independent of Christianity, and Christianity directly caused them and was responsible for Hitler and the National Socialist belief system. The Nazis were an unqualified evil, and Christianity is to blame. There's a fairly obvious bias going on within the militant atheist community. They're not trying to understand real history, and in spite of the image of them being well-educated and well-informed with stacks of books on science and philosophy and history, all of which, of course, they have read and fully understand, and how much better they're educated than their religious counterparts, the truth of the matter is, most of them don't read real history, don't know real history, and are simply trying to demonize Christianity, which isn't actually a clear picture of history or why things were done the way they were. And that's sort of the issue that I have. Militant atheists don't really care about the truth. They say they do, but they don't. They do not care about using reason and science and logic to arrive at conclusions, and they are unconcerned with having evidence to back up their beliefs. Rather, they simply look for what supports their own belief system, their own religion, which we're not allowed to call a religion because it's not a religion but a lack of belief in a god. And it's one of those things that, of course, isn't unique to militant atheism. Many groups do so, usually those driven by ideology. There are Christian groups, such as David Barton's Wall Builders, that have much the same issue. But that doesn't mitigate it, that doesn't make it better, and it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean that they are above criticism. At any rate, I don't have much else to say at the moment. I do wish to discuss this topic in a more detailed fashion in the future, but for now I will sign off. Thank you, God bless, and goodbye.